So, John, you're currently going through something that every entrepreneur has to go through at some point in time, which is pitching. And you and I, from our corporate backgrounds, we've seen our fair share of pitches, mostly bad, um, some good. And I had to laugh out loud when we had a previous conversation when I asked you about your approach to the way that you structure a pitch. And we are just talking about a face to face pitch, how you get somebody's attention and interest in something. And it turns out that we both follow a very similar, tried and tested, very easy to implement method. And one that I think more people should know about and learn, because I very often walk around events and I'll stand in front of a stand and I might be intrigued by the company name or their blurb, and I'll say, so what do you guys do? And they'll launch into some technical thing about exactly what or how they do, and they'll tell me precisely nothing about why that's relevant to me. So, John, you're right in the middle of the process. Give me your best pitch tips. What's the
So,
process?
so the most important thing is to keep things simple. What a lot of people do is they feel they have to explain every detail right at the outset, and it just confuses people. You've got to give people a connection or hook into what your business is about, so that they, at its most simple, can understand it and relate to it. When I talk to people, I say often, think of people who work in trades. They do it very naturally. You speak to someone and say, "What's your business?" And they say, "I'm a plumber, or I'm a carpenter, I'm an electrician," and they've immediately put a grouping or framework around their profession. It doesn't mean that's the only thing they do. As an example, my plumber is a qualified electrician. He also has a network of expert people who can do things like tiling, plastering, all stuff related to installing a bathroom. But if he went down that rabbit hole right at the beginning, people would get confused. And if he said, "Well, I help install home, sort of living facilities, where you can kind of wash and sort of get refreshed, and maybe wet rooms," blah, people would be really confused by what's happening. And so he just says, "I'm a domestic plumber. I typically install, boilers and service them, but I have the skills and network to do whole sort of bathroom or kitchen fittings as well." And he's given everything naturally, just in a few couple of sentences of how his business works and operates, the scope and parameters of it, and where he sits within that. And a very important element is often to then include your credentials and skills within that space and domain as well. Um, when I'm talking to people, the business I'm launching at the moment with a co-founder is all around helping SME businesses with their business management. Typically, the things that most businesses know need to be done but don't like doing, and so they deprioritize it or they ignore it at their peril often. And so it's trying to make it a very simple introduction to what that business is about and why it's relevant. And so I think that's the starting point of giving some simple information and putting a hook or connection where people can understand the broad parameters and then the specifics you work within, and you're giving a relevant example of how your business is working and operating as well.
So, what's the construct that you use? Because you and I both use the same 3 point construct.
We do indeed, yes. So how I would frame it, very simple, is I'd start by saying to people, and then I describe the problem people have. So how often entrepreneurs don't, know when they start their businesses, they have a lot of administration to do, but often don't like doing it. You'd be nodding your head at this point. Well, what we do, and then you provide the solution. So starting off, when and describe a problem, Well, what we do is, and then you provide the solution. We deliver business management services to SME businesses, typically in the creative domain, because those people really want to focus their talents in different areas. And then the third piece is giving a proof point. And I will then talk about one of the businesses we're working with, a creative business, how we have helped them grow very rapidly by taking away that stress and pressure of all the administrative elements of their business, so they can accelerate, they can grow, and they can focus their capabilities in a core area. So three pieces, start off by a very simple language, and then you explain, lay out a problem and see if people have got it. If they haven't, you need to give a bit more context. Then explain and say, well, what we do is, and you then talk about the solution. When you've covered that piece, you then give a proof point or an example of how that works. And if you do that in a smooth, short way, you very quickly see if you've got people's attention, if they're nodding, if they're responding, if they may give their own example or they ask clarifying questions. You can take things further forwards from there.
So if I was going to play your own business back to you using that construct, I'd say, you know how entrepreneurs are always seem to be overburdened by administrative work and have never got enough time in the day to get stuff done. Well, what we do
I
is
know
we
that
take
very well.
entire administrative burden off their hands by providing these resources, with the result that they've got time to work on the business instead of in the business, our favorite mantra. And that's it. It's literally the whole thing was that has got to have been less than 60 seconds. And that bit now was clear, succinct. Everybody can understand it. And anybody can apply that to anything. I've taught that method to people who were selling refrigeration. And when I had asked the guy what they do, he had launched into this whole long thing about the technical aspects of the business. And I just turned around and went, so what? Why do I care? And then he started going on a long whole thing. And I went, wait, look, reframe it. Give me these three things, and it turned out that they weren't selling refrigeration at all. They were selling a comparison market for refrigerators and other white goods in a particular region. And he thought about it for a little bit and he said, okay, you know how it's so confusing when you need to replace your broken fridge that there's just so much information on the market and you can't compare, this against that against this. He goes, well, what we do is we provide a simple platform where you say how big you want your fridge to be, how many people there are in the family, what your budget is. You press one button and it gives you the top five highest scoring refrigerators or any other, the home appliances, whether it's stoves, whatever you're choosing, gives you the top scoring ones, and you can sort those by either price or by ranking, read the reviews, and then you make a selection right there. And I went, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? You were telling me all about how you were doing about data collection points and thousands of reviews and this and that. I went, none of that was any interest to me. But now I know when I next want to buy a fridge, I'm going to go straight to your platform. That's the thing. And that I think is a thing that a lot of entrepreneurs can learn from, is just using those three tips. You know how. What I do is, with the result that that's it, job done.
It is, and all of this is what you're not trying to do is to expect people to understand the inside elements of your business. You want them to connect with you as a person and to think, okay, that is a problem that I have, or if I had that problem, you seem to be the type of person who has the capabilities to solve it. You've identified the problem, you have a solution, and you've got a live example or some practical elements where I can see evidence that coming to you would be a way of solving that in a quick, effective way.
Yeah, because people are interested in the outcomes and what it
Always.
means to them. They're not interested in how you get there. They're interested in, so what does it mean to me?
100%. And most when you're meeting with people, you can very quickly categorize them into someone who talks all about themselves, and they may be thinking they're doing that in good faith because they think, well, I better explain who I am, all my credentials, all the specifics and the features of my business, the product, the service, all the different categories or elements and things of that nature, because otherwise they won't be informed enough to make a decision. But what you're doing is really just overloading that person. They're meanwhile thinking, I don't even know what if I need this person, or if they seem to know a lot, but that isn't really how you make decisions.
Yeah.
You make it on those different elements. And I think the other piece I would throw into these conversations is that when you're talking with people, you have to find a way of engaging people's emotions first of all. That if you've got to connect with them, saying, the example we were talking about a minute ago, how entrepreneurs hate doing the administration sides of their business, or how they love the reasons they set the business up in the first place to do that particular thing they're brilliant at. What they hate or what they detest, that's an emotional trigger or reaction. Once you've connected with people emotionally, they're either empathizing with you, or they're at least they're kind of tuned in and they understand it. The important thing then is to provide some type of logic or fact or information to support it, so that they can understand the concept, the associated piece. So it's not just an emotional trigger, but there's some facts and logic associated with it as well. Now, if you then want to take a conversation further forwards and try and get people to think, well, if this service may be for me, you want to try and know if you can move people towards a next step. The next step may be learning more about it, or the next step may be a purchase decision. Often it falls into the earlier category where people need to learn more about a product or service, figure out if it's for them. With your refrigeration example, it wasn't for you at that moment in time, but you'd lodged it and think, next time I need that, I now know where to go. So it's like a future decision point. So any way you're engaging with people, you have to figure out if you're trying to drive a specific action or next step. So is there kind of a level of urgency to do something? But you only introduce that piece if you've moved the conversation along and you think someone is now informed enough about what you're doing and it is relevant to them. Otherwise, you rush it and it feels a sense of desperation. Trying to close too early is definitely a mistake. You have to give people space and time to understand the business you're in and whether it's relevant to them and relevant at that point in time.
Great tips, John. I wish you best of luck with the next step in your journey of launching your new venture.
Thank you very much, and hopefully these pieces of advice are helpful to our community and people who are looking to take similar steps.